Part Waitan. The great chamber of Viridia Prime hung in the quiet dark of space, a silver ring spinning slowly around a pale blue star. Inside, under soft lights and curved ceilings made of polished moonstone, the Galactic Concord met once more. 200 species filled the room, some tall and thin with skin like glass, others wrapped in mist, a few floating in nutrient tanks, but all watched the center table with the same tension. This was not a normal meeting. The Krell Dominion had crossed the neutral border again. 3 systems had fallen in 6 weeks, and now, every delegate waited to see what humanity would say. Humanity had only joined the Concord 73 cycles ago. Their ships were small, their weapons outdated, their culture full of strange contradictions, war songs next to peace poems, fast food beside slow meditations. But they had surprised everyone. They fixed broken trade routes with clever math. They calmed feuds with quiet words, and when the Mycelian collective nearly collapsed from a data plague, it was a human engineer named Daniel Carter who rebuilt their network using nothing but old Earth code and patience. Now, Carter sat at the round table, his dark suit neat, his hands folded. He looked calm, but his eyes held something heavy. Around him voices rose in many tongues. Veln clicks, Zorathi hums, the soft chimes of the Lumari. Arguments swirled like dust in a storm. Some wanted to strike first. Others begged for more talks. A few whispered that the Krell could not be stopped, only delayed. Then the Grand Speaker of the Concord, an elder Mycelian whose body shimmered like fog over water, turned to Carter. "Ambassador Carter," she said, her voice like wind through dry leaves, "your people have walked both paths, war and peace. What say you now?" All eyes turned to him. Even the Krell observer, cloaked in black armor and seated far from the others, tilted his helmet slightly. Carter stood. He did not reach for his data slate. He did not call up star maps or casualty reports. He just looked around the room, slowly, as if memorizing every face. "We've studied your plans," he said, his voice low but clear. "We've run the numbers. Every option ends in more blood, more broken worlds, more children lost," a Veln delegate scoffed. "Then what would you have us do? Bow to the Krell?" "No," Carter said. "But we will not become them." He paused. Then without another word, he placed his data slate gently on the obsidian table. It made a soft click that echoed in the sudden silence. He turned and walked away. Behind him, his team stood as one: Lena Ortiz from Earth's Diplomatic Corps, Nate Briggs in his retired military uniform, Maya Ruiz with her arms crossed and jaw set, and followed him out. No one spoke. No one looked back. The chamber stayed frozen. The Mycelian speaker blinked slowly. The Zorathi ambassador tapped his claws together in confusion. The Krell observer remained still, but sensors later showed his heart rate had spiked. Outside, in the corridor, Carter walked fast, his shoes clicking on the metal floor. Lena caught up to him. "Was that the plan?" she asked, voice tight. "It was the only choice left," he said. "But they'll think we've betrayed them." "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe they'll finally see what we've been trying to say." Back in the chamber, the silence broke into chaos. Voices rose in anger, fear, disbelief. A Lumari delegate floated upward, her light flickering red. "They left, just left." On the station's main viewing deck, hundreds of aliens watched through the glass as the human shuttle detached from the docking arm. It did not accelerate fast. It did not cloak. It simply turned toward the Sol system and flew away, steady and sure. Within the hour, the news spread. From the crystal cities of Helios 9 to the methane lakes of Xylos Minor, the same message flashed across every network. Humanity has abandoned the table. Some called it cowardice. Others treason. But a few, very few, wondered if it was something else entirely. On Earth, President Lena Ortiz, no relation to the diplomat, watched the feed from Viridia Prime in her office. She saw Carter walk out. She saw the empty chair. She did not smile. She did not frown. She just turned to her aide and said, "Begin protocol exodus." Across the Sol system, silent orders went out. Human freighters stopped delivering fusion cores to the Concord depots. Science vessels powered down their long-range comms. Defense satellites shifted orbits, not to attack but to shield. Earth was pulling inward, not in fear but in focus. The galaxy had always seen humanity as loud, impulsive, emotional. They built cities in days and tore them down in hours. They cried at movies and laughed during funerals. They fought like fire and forgave like rain, but no one expected them to walk away from a war table when the whole galaxy was watching. Yet that was exactly what they did. And as the human shuttle disappeared into the warp lane, a strange feeling settled over Viridia Prime, not just shock, but something deeper, doubt, shame, a quiet question no one dared speak aloud. What if they're right? The Krell observer sent a coded message to his high command. It read, humans did not flee. They made a statement. Recommend caution. But the Concord leaders were too angry to listen. They called emergency sessions. They drafted condemnations. They even debated expelling humanity from the Alliance, though humanity had already left on their own terms. Meanwhile, on a small farm in Oregon, a boy named Eli watched the stars through his backyard telescope. He didn't know about Viridia Prime or the Krell or the empty chair. He just knew that tonight the sky felt different, calmer, like the universe had taken a breath. Back on Viridia, the table remained. The data slate still sat where Carter left it. No one touched it. No one sat in his chair. It stayed empty for days, a silent reminder that sometimes the loudest action is walking away. And the galaxy watched, not with anger now, but with a slow, dawning horror. Because they realized something terrible. Humanity hadn't broken the rules. They had simply decided the game wasn't worth playing anymore. Cartoon on Earth, the sky stayed blue. Birds still sang at dawn. Trains ran on time. But something had changed. It was not in the air or the ground, but in the way people moved. Slower, quieter, with purpose. The news feeds no longer showed war maps or alien threats. Instead, they showed farmers planting drought-resistant wheat, engineers testing solar sails in the upper atmosphere, children learning how to build water purifiers from scrap metal. Earth had turned inward, not in fear, but in focus. President Lena Ortiz stood on the steps of the United Earth Assembly in Geneva. The crowd before her was calm, not cheering, not shouting. They just waited. She held no script. She did not need one. We were asked to choose, she said, her voice steady. Between survival and conscience. We choose conscience, the word spread fast. Not just across cities, but through every human colony in the Sol system. Mars, dome towns, the floating habitats of Venus, the ice mining outposts on Europa. Everywhere people nodded. They had known this was coming. For months, whispers had grown into plans. Now those plans became action. Protocol Exodus was not a secret. It was a promise. All Earth vessels returned to Sol space. Human scientists stopped sharing quantum encryption keys. Trade routes that once linked Earth to a dozen alien markets went dark. And then came the shield. No one saw it activate. One moment, sensors from Viridia Prime could read Earth's weather patterns, city lights, even traffic flows. The next, Sol system vanished. Not hidden, not cloaked, but wrapped in a field that bent data, not light. It was like trying to read a book through thick fog. You knew the words were there, but you could not reach them. Alien scientists were baffled. The Velen called it impossible geometry. The Zarathi said it broke the laws of information flow. But humans just called it privacy. They had built it not to hide weapons or armies, but to protect peace. No more spying. No more demands. No more being pulled into wars that were not theirs. Back on Viridia Prime, the effects hit fast. The Concord's antimatter refineries, which relied on human-designed stabilizers, began to overheat. Without Earth's engineers, the cooling systems failed one by one. 3 refineries shut down in a week. Fuel shortages spread. Patrol ships sat grounded. Worse, the talks fell apart. Without Daniel Carter's quiet presence, old grudges flared. The Mycelian Collective accused the Velen of hoarding resources. The Lumari refused to share their healing spores unless the Zarathi returned a stolen artifact from 2 centuries ago. Arguments that had been held back by human mediation now exploded into full crises. A young Zarathi delegate named Kale tried to call Earth. His message bounced back with a simple reply. We are listening, but we are not participating. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then he whispered, They really left us. On Mars, Nate Briggs stood in a greenhouse filled with red soil and green shoots. He wore no uniform now, just a plain gray shirt and boots. He had been a war planner once, respected across the Concord for his mind. But he had seen too many battles end with orphans and ruins. Now he taught Martian teens how to grow potatoes in low gravity. They think we ran away, he said to a student who asked about Viridia Prime. Did we? The boy asked. No, Nate said, brushing dirt from a leaf. We just stopped pretending that violence is the only answer. Meanwhile, in orbit above Earth, Maya Ruiz piloted the UNS Horizon on its final Concorde mission. Her ship carried medical supplies for a plague-stricken Velen colony. She delivered them without speaking to anyone. She left the cargo at the edge of their space and turned back. As she jumped to warp, she sent one message. Take care of your people. We'll take care of ours. The Velen were stunned. They had expected blame or at least silence. Instead, they got help, no strings, no speeches. That night, their council debated for hours. Some called it a trick. Others called it grace. Back on Earth, schools changed their lessons. History classes no longer glorified old wars. Instead, they studied the cost of every bullet, every bomb. Science labs focused on clean energy, not weapons. Artists painted murals of hands planting trees, not raising swords. The galaxy watched, confused. They had expected humanity to collapse without allies. Instead, Earth grew stronger in silence. Food production rose. Energy grids stabilized. Crime dropped. People looked each other in the eye again. On Viridia Prime, a Velen philosopher named Elira wrote a long essay titled The Quiet Rebellion. She argued that humanity had not abandoned the galaxy, they had challenged it. They showed us that peace is not weakness, she wrote. It is discipline. It is choice. And it is terrifying because it asks us to be better. Her words spread. Some mocked her, but many read them twice. The Krell, meanwhile, saw opportunity. With the conquered divided, they struck again. A small mining world near the border fell in 3 days. The Concorde sent ships, but without human tactical support, their formations were clumsy. The Krell crushed them easily. Panic grew. Delegates demanded action. But who would lead? The old leaders were shouting at each other. The new ones had no trust. Then a strange thing happened. A mycelian freighter, damaged in the battle, drifted near the edge of Sol space. Its crew expected to be ignored, or worse, captured. Instead, a small Earth repair drone approached. It patched their hull, refilled their oxygen, and left without a word. The only sign it was human was a tiny symbol on the drone, a circle with a sprout inside. The mycelian captain wept. They still care, he told his crew. They just won't fight for us. News of the rescue spread. Hope flickered in dark places. Maybe humanity wasn't gone. Maybe they were just waiting for the galaxy to grow up. On Earth, President Ortiz walked through a park in Chicago. Children played near a fountain. An old man fed pigeons. No one recognized her. No one asked for war updates. They just lived. She stopped by a bench and sat. A woman beside her offered half a sandwich. Ortiz smiled and took it. Quiet day, the woman said. The best kind, Ortiz replied. Far above, satellites hummed softly, guarding not with guns, but with silence. The shield held. The farms grew, the schools taught, and Earth, for the first time in decades, breathed. The galaxy had expected chaos when humanity left the table. Instead, they got something far more unsettling, an example. A living proof that you could walk away from war and still stand tall. And as the weeks passed, more and more aliens began to wonder, not how to bring humanity back, but how to follow them. Part 3 months passed. The Krell kept moving. They took another system, then another. The conquered tried to fight back. But without unity, their efforts were like throwing pebbles at a storm. Ships were lost. Colonies fell silent. Fear spread like a virus through the trade lanes. And still, Earth said nothing. Then, one night, every screen in the galaxy flickered. It started on Viridia Prime, where a tired Zorathi clerk was reviewing damage reports. Suddenly, his display went black. Then slowly an image appeared. A child riding a bicycle down a tree-lined street. Sunlight dappled the pavement. Laughter echoed from unseen speakers. The clerk froze. Across the galaxy, the same thing happened. On warships, in hospitals, in marketplaces, in Krell command centers, every screen, every comm panel, every public feed showed the same thing. Not weapons, not armies, just life. A farmer in Kansas watering his corn. A teacher in Nairobi writing on a chalkboard. A couple in Tokyo sharing tea on a rooftop at sunset. A group of teenagers in Buenos Aires playing music on old guitars. A scientist in Reykjavik watching auroras with her daughter. No words, no logos. Just moments stitched together like a quiet song. The broadcast lasted 17 minutes. It showed no speeches, no flags, no demands. Only people living, working, loving, creating, healing. At the end, a single line appeared in every known language, simple and clear. "We are still here, but we will not fight your wars." Then the screens went back to normal. Silence followed. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of shock. On a Veln cruiser, a soldier stared at his hands and wondered why he had ever wanted to fire his weapon. In a Krell barracks, a young conscript whispered to his bunkmate, "Is that what peace looks like?" The broadcast spread. People watched it again and again. Some cried. Some got angry. But many just sat very still, as if something inside them had shifted. On Viridia Prime, the mycelian speaker called an emergency session. "This changes nothing," snapped a Zorathi general. "It is propaganda." "No," said Elira, the Veln philosopher. "It is a mirror." She stood before the chamber, her voice soft but firm. "For centuries, we have measured strength by how much we can destroy. Humanity shows us another way. Strength as creation, as care, as choice." The room stayed quiet. Even the Krell observer, who had remained through all the chaos, did not move. Later, intercepted comms would show he had sent a single word to his high command: reconsider. Back on Earth, no one celebrated. They had not sent the broadcast to win hearts. They had sent it because they could not stay silent while the galaxy burned, and yet could not join the fire. It was their truth, offered without expectation. In a small workshop in Portland, Daniel Carter watched the replay on a handheld screen. He did not smile. He looked tired. Beside him, Lena Ortiz from the Diplomatic Corps handed him a cup of coffee. "Do you think they understood?" she asked. "I don't know," he said, "but we had to try." Meanwhile, the Krell advance slowed. Not because of battles, but because of doubt, their commanders argued. Some said the broadcast was a trick, a way to weaken their will. Others said it revealed a truth they had ignored, that conquest leaves nothing worth keeping. A Krell scholar named Vrex, once a historian before the war machine took him, wrote a secret letter to his brother. "I saw a human child laugh today through that broadcast. I cannot remember the last time I heard a Krell child laugh. What have we become?" His letter was found weeks later after he disappeared from his post. On Mars, Nate Briggs received a message from an old Zorathi friend. It read, "Your silence speaks louder than our cannons. We are ashamed." Nate did not reply. He just turned off his screen and went back to teaching his students how to fix a broken hydroponic pump. The Concord, meanwhile, began to fracture in new ways. Some species called for renewed talks with Earth. Others demanded harsher measures against the Krell. But a few, very few, started asking a different question. What if we stopped fighting altogether? A Lumari delegation quietly withdrew from the War Council. They returned to their homeworld and began planting memory groves, sacred forests where they would store not battle plans, but songs, stories, and recipes from 100 worlds. "If the galaxy ends," their leader said, "let it end with beauty, not blood." Earth noticed none of this. Or if they did not react. Their cities grew greener. Their power grids ran on sunlight and wind. Their children learned to build, not break. Yet the broadcast kept echoing. In refugee camps, parents showed it to their kids and said, "This is what we're fighting to protect." On pirate ships, crews argued over whether to keep raiding or try to find a quiet place to live. Even in Krell training academies, cadets whispered about the human streets, the open skies, the lack of fear in people's eyes. One night, a damaged Concord scout ship drifted near the edge of Sol space. Its pilot, a young mycelian named Tira, expected to be scanned and turned away. Instead, a soft voice came over her comm. "State your needs." She hesitated. "Oxygen, fuel, repairs. Hold position." Within an hour, 3 small drones arrived. They fixed her hull, refilled her tanks, and left a data chip taped to her viewport. Inside was no message, just a collection of Earth music. Jazz, folk, lullabies, protest songs. Tira played it all the way home. When she landed, she handed the chip to her commander and said, "We're doing this wrong." He listened. Then he called for a ceasefire, just for 1 day. Just to think that day stretched into 3, then a week. The Krell, confused by the sudden pause, held back, and in that quiet, something fragile began to grow. Not an alliance. Not a treaty. Just a shared breath. The galaxy had expected humanity to return with weapons or warnings. Instead, they sent a window, a glimpse into a world that chose life even when death was easier. And for the first time, many aliens wondered if peace was not a dream, but a discipline they had simply never tried. On Earth, a boy named Eli looked up at the stars again. He didn't know about broadcasts or battles. He just knew the night felt lighter. And far away in 1,000 dark places, others looked up too, no longer hoping for a savior, but asking themselves what kind of world they wanted to build when the war finally ended. Part 4, the Krell came at last. Their fleet, black and jagged like broken teeth, descended on Viridia Prime without warning. Alarms screamed through the station. Delegates ran for escape pods. Conquered warships scrambled, but they were outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. The battle lasted less than 2 hours. Shields failed. Docks exploded. The great silver ring of Viridia Prime cracked along its spine, leaking air and light into the void. As the last evacuation shuttles fled, a single ship dropped out of warp near the edge of the system. It was not a warship. It had no weapons, no armor, no cloaking field. Just smooth white hull and a single blue stripe along its side, the mark of Earth's civilian fleet. The UNS Horizon inside, Captain Maya Ruiz sat alone on the bridge. Her crew had volunteered to stay behind on Mars. This was her choice, her risk. She did not wear a uniform, just a plain gray jacket and her old pilot's badge. On her screen, the Krell Armada loomed, already turning toward the fleeing shuttles. She took a deep breath. Then she opened all channels. "This is Captain Maya Ruiz of the United Earth vessel Horizon," she said, her voice calm. "I am unarmed. I carry no soldiers, but I bring something you might need." Before anyone could respond, she sent a signal. Not a weapon, not a virus, but a data burst. Huge, clean, and open. It poured into every ship in range, Krell, Conquered, Refugee, Pirate, all of them. It was Earth's archive. Every book, every song, every film, every scientific paper, every recipe, every child's drawing scanned and saved over centuries. The full story of a species that chose to build instead of burn. On Krell command decks, screens filled with images of human hands planting seeds, fixing engines, holding newborns, painting murals on ruined walls. Audio played softly. Mozart, Nina Simone, a grandmother telling a bedtime story in Spanish, a protest chant from an old Earth rally. No more war. No more lies. The Krell High Commander, a veteran of 100 conquests, stared at his screen. He saw a video of a human schoolroom. Children raised their hands to answer questions. No guards, no fear. Just learning. "What is this?" he growled. "A gift," Maya's voice replied. "Take it, study it, or delete it. But know this is what we protect. Not territory. Not power, meaning." Silence followed. Then from deep within the Krell fleet, something unexpected happened. A mid-sized cruiser, the Iron Maw, powered down its weapons. Its captain, Vrex, the same scholar who had once written about human laughter, broadcast a single word in the old Krell tongue. Enough. Other ships hesitated. Some followed. Others fired on Vrex's vessel. Civil war erupted right there in the shadow of Viridia Prime. Brothers turned on brothers. Loyalty shattered. The Krell Armada, once a single fist, split into factions. Some still hungry for conquest. Others suddenly unsure. The Concord survivors watched in disbelief as the Krell tore themselves apart. No human fired a shot. No bomb fell. The battle ended not with victory, but with confusion. Maya stayed in orbit as the fighting raged. She sent more data. Medical guides, crop rotation plans, blueprints for clean water systems. She did not speak again. She just gave and gave and gave. On one Krell ship, a young engineer named Jorik found a file labeled, "How to Mend a Broken Heart." He opened it. It was a poem. He read it 3 times. Then he walked to his commander and said, "I will not fire on unarmed ships again." He was arrested, but others heard, and they remembered. Back on Earth, news of the Horizon stand spread quietly. No headlines. No fanfare. Just a message from President Ortiz. She did what we all agreed to do, offer truth, even when it is dangerous. In a hospital in Denver, an old war veteran watched the replay of Maya's broadcast. He had lost his leg in the Titan skirmish 20 years ago. He had hated the Krell ever since. But now, seeing their ships turn on each other over a poem, he wept. Maybe hate was the real enemy all along, he whispered. On Mars, Nate Briggs received a coded message from a former Zorathi ally. It read, "Your captain did more in 1 hour than our fleets did in 10 years. Tell her, thank you." Nate forwarded it to Maya. She never replied. But she kept flying. As the Krell civil conflict grew, refugee ships from both sides began appearing near Sol space. They did not ask for weapons. They asked for the archive. Earth sent it freely. No questions. No conditions. A Krell scientist named Lyra, once forced to design plasma cannons, used human engineering texts to build a water purifier for her people's camp. She wrote to Earth, "You gave us back our hands. Now we use them to heal, not hurt," the mycelian speaker, watching from a safe distance, said in a closed session. Humanity did not defeat the Krell. They reminded them they were more than soldiers. Even the Veln, once the loudest critics of Earth's withdrawal, began sharing human stories with their young. "This is what courage looks like," they said. Not in armor, but in openness. Maya finally returned to Mars 3 weeks later. Her ship was scarred from near misses, but her spirit was steady. Reporters wanted interviews. Leaders wanted speeches. She declined them all. She went straight to a school in New Chicago Dome and sat with students learning botany. "Why did you go?" asked a girl named Mira. "Because someone had to show them there's another way," Maya said. "Were you scared?" "Every second," she admitted. "But fear doesn't mean you stop doing what's right." That night, as she slept in a borrowed apartment, the first peace overtures from the Krell reformers reached Viridia Prime. Not surrender. Not alliance. Just a request. "Send us more of your stories." Earth did not reply with diplomats or deals. They sent a new data package, this time filled with music from every human culture. And a note, "Start with listening." And so, in the ruins of a broken station and the hearts of a broken empire, something new began, not with treaties but with trust. Not with force, but with a single unarmed ship and a captain who believed that even the hardest hearts could remember how to feel. The galaxy had expected humanity to save them with weapons. Instead, they saved them with words. And in that quiet act, the tide truly turned. Farthirer. A year after Viridia Prime fell, a new meeting place rose in the quiet dark between Mars and Jupiter. It was not a station of steel and glass, not a fortress or a palace. Just a simple ring of connected modules built by many hands. Veln engineers, Zorathi welders, mycelian designers, even a team of reformed Krell architects who once built warships and now built bridges. At its heart floated a single room, round and open, with no raised seats, no flags, no weapons allowed. And in the center stood a table, not obsidian, not metal, wood, cut from a fallen redwood on Earth, sanded smooth by human hands, polished with oil made from olives grown in California. It had no tech, no screens, no hidden comms, just grain, warmth, and silence. Delegates arrived in unarmed shuttles. No escorts, no armor. A young Zorathi named Kale stepped out first, carrying only a datapad filled with draft principles. He was followed by a mycelian elder whose mist body shimmered with soft gold light. Then came a Lumari healer, a Veln poet, and last of all, a Krell named Vrex, now called Scholar Vrex, wearing plain gray robes. His old armor left behind on his homeworld. They entered the chamber and saw him already there. Daniel Carter. He wore no title, no badge, just a dark shirt and quiet eyes. He did not stand at the head of the table. He sat in the middle like everyone else. When they entered, he nodded. No speech, no grand welcome. Just space offered freely. President Lena Ortiz watched from Earth through a single open channel. She did not speak. She just listened as the first words of the new accord were spoken not by leaders, but by a Zorathi student who had once believed war was the only language the galaxy understood. "We propose a charter," Kyle said, voice steady, not based on who can destroy the most, but on who can build the best, not on fear but on care. He laid out the first article, shared knowledge without control, no patents on life-saving tech, no secrets that could starve or silence others. The mycelian added a second. Every species must protect at least one living thing that is not their own. Forests, oceans, alien blooms, human wheat fields. "If you care for something outside yourself," she said, "you cannot easily destroy it." Scholar Vrex spoke last. "We Krell were taught that strength is taking. But we saw another kind, strength is giving. So our pledge is this: we will never again build a weapon we would not let our children see." No one clapped. No one cheered. but something passed between them, a quiet understanding like roots growing under soil. Outside the ring, ships from 50 species floated in stillness. No engines running, no targeting systems active, just presence. On Earth, children in classrooms watched the feed. On Mars, Nate Briggs paused his lesson on soil pH to listen. In a Krell settlement on a reclaimed moon, families gathered around a single screen, hearing their former enemy speak of peace. And then, one by one, each delegate placed a small object on the wooden table. A Veln seed, a Lumari crystal, a Zarathi carving, a mycelium sporipod, and from Carter a single sprout in a clay pot, grown from that same redwood. They did not vote with machines. They raised their hands. All of them. The first law of the new accord passed not by majority, but by unity. Later, as the sun rose over Geneva, President Ortiz walked alone through a public garden. She passed benches, fountains, old men playing chess. No one bowed. No one saluted. She was just a woman in a green coat watching bees hover over lavender. A little girl ran up, holding a drawing. "Is this what the new table looks like?" she asked, showing a crayon sketch of people sitting together under stars. Ortiz smiled. "Even better," she said, "because it's real." Back in the ring, Carter stayed after the others left. He ran his hand over the wood. It was warm, alive. He thought of all the tables he had sat at, war rooms, negotiation halls, emergency councils, and how they always ended in compromise, not change. This one felt different, not because of the wood, but because of the choice behind it. The galaxy had once expected humanity to be saviors or soldiers. Instead, they became something quieter, reminders that peace is not the absence of conflict but the presence of care. That strength is not measured in firepower, but in the courage to walk away from a broken game and build a new one. On a farm in Oregon, Eli, the boy who once watched stars, now taught his younger sister how to plant beans. "You put the seed down," he said, "and trust the earth to do the rest." Far away, near the ruins of Viridia Prime, a Krell engineer and a Veln botanist worked side by side, planting the first joint garden in neutral space. They did not speak the same language, but they shared water, tools, and silence. Earth did not rejoin the old Concord. They never returned to the old ways. But they opened their doors not to allies, but to learners. Students came from every world to study not war, but water systems, music, ethics, how to listen before speaking. And the wooden table stayed in the ring, untouched by politics, unmarked by time. Visitors came just to sit at it, to feel its stillness. Some said it hummed. Others said it healed. But most just said it reminded them that another world was possible. The galaxy had watched in horror when humanity abandoned the table. Now they understood. Humanity hadn't left the table. They had simply built a better one and invited everyone to sit down not as enemies or rivals but as neighbors. And in that simple act, the universe began to breathe again.